Hello, I'm Benas Gerdziunas, author of interactive story Ukraine Grey Zone, which looks inside a cluster of mining villages divided by the war in eastern Ukraine. It is told using mainly still images, but also field recording, soundtrack, looped videos, as well as several graphic elements. So there are three chapters, three storylines about those who live, those who fight, and those who fought there. Many locals in this area, Zolot, still back the Russian-led separatists, while others fight for Ukraine on the front lines, sometimes literally inside of their own homes. This keyword, grey zone, is a term used in the military as well as in the failed ceasefire deals that describe this buffer zone along the front line. But I've also tried taking this grey zone term further by using it in a way that I believe really describes the nature of the war there. Basically, the boundaries and the distinctions have been blurred or grayed between what makes a soldier and a civilian, between who is pro-Ukrainian or pro-Russian, and between where is safe and where is not. In a way, the time is really suspended as people await peace while having to live in this ongoing war of attrition. So, for example, two military officers raise a daughter while on deployment in the area. Meanwhile, other soldiers here live side by side or even share houses with the local families whose children attend schools just meters from the trenches. This one following example, I believe, really illustrates these fading boundaries, which really stuck with me. So I spent the night at the trenches with the soldiers and then walked literally for less than 10 minutes, several hundred meters to a functioning school. And since the war is in its 7th year, these kids have spent most of their lives under shelling, whether distant or near. A volunteer bringing aid to them was also injured just outside. Another grey aspect is the truly immersing isolation in the area. With the mobile connection available only sporadically, soldiers on deployment have very little knowledge of the world outside. And those living there are also constantly bombarded with propaganda and outright disinformation. I first began reporting in Ukraine in 2014, just after the first ceasefire deal that subsequently fell apart and was replaced by another one that never really stopped the shooting anyway. And this element of an ongoing, routine, predictable fighting is something I believe would be best told by using an interactive format that draws its immersion mainly from sound. While there, I recorded sounds of bombing impacts or shells flying overhead, as you can see here, or small arms fire that crackles here and there throughout the day and night. And to mesh the different fragments together, which also included just scenes from the daily life, we had to find the soundtrack. So together with audiovisual artist Luis Perez, we kept trying to find an audio track that could be looped seamlessly, but that would also integrate with the field recordings that sort of pop in as you scroll along. It was also important to sort of set the scene, the tone essentially, and the mood for the whole story. But subsequently, we tread the fine line of not making the sound too arbitrary or too dramatic or too subjective in how the scene is portrayed. And I really hope we did manage to strike the right balance. Meanwhile, the story itself was shot from the start with the knowledge that it would be in black and white. The conversation on visuals started even before the reporting began. At first with Thomas Burns, our producer, before the project eventually moved over to the Lithuanian public broadcaster. It was published subsequently after a second trip in 2020, which gave this needed follow-up with many of the people profiled during the first time around. Visually, it was important to have a way to demarcate the front line, which ended up being this red line that appears sporadically throughout the story, to give a sense and a constant reminder of the trench line. And together with Rokas Anisas, who did design and development for the story, we also had to find a cross-platform solution. So we had to find a design that worked the same way on all devices and was easy to learn for all readers. But this also limited our options a bit, so in the end we chose to stick with scrolling. In hindsight, we probably could have structured the introduction sequence a bit better, because it left some users confused. The images also had to be mostly center-focused to allow easier cropping when viewed on mobile. The text alongside had to be concise and appear as captions, subtitles almost, to the photos. We also slowed down the scrolling speed to give more space for the visuals and the sound. With the images, I also try to make sure that they do drive the overall atmosphere, the visual narrative, but again, they do not over dramatize and present this stereotypically bleak insight into the community there, which, despite everything, perseveres due to the strength of its people. I first reported in this area in 2015, meeting the people that I would spend time with again in 2019 and 20. But I also try to stay away from the sort of Putin and Russia geopolitical focus and show just how there are these regular people who took out loans and had plans, but everything was put on hold by the war. Meanwhile, people caught in this political struggle are afraid of being labeled pro-Ukrainian when crossing to separatist areas, where many still have families that were split from them by the trench line, or labeled separatist and an enemy essentially by the Ukrainian media, public figures, the soldiers, or the public in general. Now we hope to translate the story into Russian and Ukrainian, and would love publishing partners to reach a wider audience. And as now Ukraine is coming back to international headlines due to the Russian military buildup, I hope we did manage to succeed in offering an intimate snapshot into this conflict. A snapshot that goes beyond the headlines and looks into the many different backgrounds of this war for both international and even, I hope, Ukrainian and Russian audiences. And that there are these communities that need support, aid, but most of all, for the shooting to stop. Thank you.